James Cartwright was a renowned and immensely wealthy businessman, known across the country for his chain of luxury hotels. At just 35 years old, he was a handsome bachelor, often featured on the covers of prestigious business and lifestyle magazines. With his strong jawline, slick-back dark hair, and piercing blue eyes, James had the kind of presence that made him a magnet for attention. Women in high society admired him not only for his looks, but also for his growing empire. Yet James wasn't interested in romance or relationships. He was dedicated to his work, and that was all that seemed to matter. James lived in a spacious penthouse at the top of a skyscraper in the heart of the city. The apartment, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Every evening, after long hours at the office, James would sit in his favorite leather chair by the window, sipping on a glass of whiskey, watching the city lights twinkle as night fell. His maid, an elderly woman who had worked for him for years, kept the apartment spotless and ensured he was well fed with gourmet meals. But despite all his success, James harbored a secret passion: books. He was an avid reader and often spent his evenings reading novels. It wasn't something he mentioned in interviews or in public, but books had shaped him into the man he had become. Growing up in a modest, struggling household, James had found refuge in adventure novels, which filled his mind with dreams of escaping his circumstances. James had grown up in a small town with two sisters and a younger brother. His family had never been wealthy, but it was his imagination, sparked by the stories he read, that gave him the vision to pursue something greater. At the age of 14, James convinced his best friend to go on a hitchhiking adventure to a neighboring city. They stayed overnight in a small budget hotel, and it was there, in the dimly lit room, that James had an epiphany. Hotels, he thought, a place where travelers from all walks of life could find comfort and rest. From that moment on, he started dreaming about building his own hotels, places that weren't just a bed for the night, but experiences in themselves. His first ideas were wild and imaginative: hotels in trees, underground hotels, even space hotels that would one day orbit the Earth. He filled sketchbooks with his designs, each one more creative than the last. These dreams fueled him, and as he grew older, his passion for architecture and hospitality solidified. His teachers encouraged him to pursue a career in design, and despite his family's skepticism, James worked tirelessly, earning a scholarship to a top university. During his time at university, James met Emily Harrison, a beautiful blonde who came from an affluent family. Emily, with her sharp wit and graceful charm, was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. James was captivated by her beauty and intelligence. He spent much of his scholarship money trying to impress her. Lavish dinners, expensive gifts, tickets to the best shows in town. But what James didn't know was that to Emily, their relationship was nothing more than a fleeting distraction. While James was falling deeply in love, Emily was only playing along, enjoying the attention of a young man with potential but no real wealth at the time. Eventually, Emily broke things off without warning. She had found someone else, someone wealthier, more established, a man who already had the riches James was still striving to achieve. Heartbroken, James made a vow to himself. He would become rich, not just for his own sake, but to prove Emily wrong. He wanted her to regret leaving him. This heartbreak was the fuel he needed to push himself harder than ever before. One evening, while James was relaxing with a book in his penthouse, his phone rang. It was his business partner, Michael, calling with exciting news. "James, we have a huge opportunity," Michael said. "Alessandro Russo, one of the biggest international investors, is interested in partnering with us. He loves your designs and wants to build something similar in Europe. But there's a catch." James frowned. "What kind of catch?" "Well, Russo is known for being very traditional," Michael explained. "He hosts these weekly business dinners with his partners. But there's a rule. Everyone has to attend with their fiancée or wife. It's kind of a superstition with him. He believes that having a stable partner brings good fortune in business." James laughed. "And you know I don't have anyone like that." "Well, you'll need to find someone quickly if you want this deal," Michael said. James considered it for a moment. His business always came first, and if pretending to have a fiancée was what it took to secure a deal, he would do it. "I'll figure something out," James replied confidently. Inside, James met Nina, a young librarian with long dark hair, blue eyes, and a kind smile. She was wearing a simple outfit, just a pleated skirt and a white blouse. But there was something about her that caught James's attention. They struck up a conversation, and after a few minutes, James made a bold decision. "Nina, I know this might sound strange, but would you be willing to attend a business dinner with me tomorrow night? I need someone to play the role of my fiancée." Nina blinked in surprise. "Your fiancée? But why me?" James explained the situation, and after some hesitation, Nina agreed. The next evening, Nina arrived at the restaurant in a simple but elegant blue dress. James had expected her to wear the glamorous red dress he had bought, but Nina's understated elegance worked in her favor. She charmed everyone at the dinner, including Alessandro Russo. But as the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. During a lull in the conversation, Nina looked across the table at James and said, "You haven't always been honest in your business, have you?" James froze. Nina's expression darkened. "A few years ago, your company demolished my family's home to build one of your hotels." James was stunned. He had no idea what she was talking about, but before he could respond, Michael spoke up. "She's right," Michael admitted quietly. "It happened while you were away on a business trip. I handled it myself, but I didn't tell you the full story. Her family refused to sell their home, so I made sure they were forced out. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time." James looked at Michael in shock and anger. "You did this behind my back?" Alessandro, who had been observing the exchange, stood up. "I don't work with dishonest people," he said coldly. "Consider our deal off." With that, he left the restaurant, taking the potential business partnership with him. Determined to make things right, James went to the library the next morning to find Nina. He apologized sincerely, explaining that he hadn't known about the incident and that it was Michael who had acted behind his back. After some time, Nina forgave him, and the two began spending more time together. Over the next few months, they fell in love. Eventually, James proposed to Nina, and they were married in a small, intimate ceremony. For their honeymoon, they traveled to various countries, visiting places where famous writers had lived, bonding over their shared love of literature. In the end, James had found not only success in business, but also true love and happiness.